increase in Q4 as revised. For a given quarter, the estimate of GDP and GDI may differ for various reasons, including the incorporation of largely independent source data. However, over a longer time span, the estimate of GDP and GDI tend to follow similar patterns of change. Revisions. The second estimate of Q1 change in real GDP is 0.9%. Its points are $40.7 billion, less than the advanced estimate last month, primarily reflecting upward revision to imports and downward revision to private inventory investment. So if you look at some of the advance in the second, it was in the advanced GMP was 0.2, and it's a negative 0.7 now. So you can see what was going on there. Profits from current purchases of current products, corporate profits with inventory valuation adjustment, that is called IVA, and capital consumption adjustment decreased 125.5 billion in Q1, compared with a decrease of 30.4 billion in Q4. Profits of domestic financial corporations decreased 2.6 billion in the first quarter, compared with a decrease of 12.5 billion in Q4. Profits of domestic non-financial corporations decreased 100.4 billion in contrast to an increase of 18.1 billion. The rest of the world component of profits decreased 22.4 billion, compared with a decrease of 36.1 billion. This measure is calculated as a difference between receipts from the rest of the world to the rest of the world. In the first quarter, receipts decreased by 28.9 billion, payments decreased by 6.5 billion. Taxes on corporate income increased 9.3 billion in Q1, in contrast to a decrease of 4.8 billion in the fourth quarter. Profits after tax decreased 134.6 billion, compared with a decrease of 25.8 billion. The first quarter changes in tax and corporate income mainly reflects the expansion of bonus depreciation provisions. Their dividends increased by 5.1 billion in Q1, compared with an increase of 18.6 billion in Q4. Undistributed profits decreased by 139.7 billion, compared with a decrease of 44.3 billion. Net cash flow with IVA. Internal funds available to corporations for investment decreased by 132.1 billion, in contrast to an increase of 12.2 billion. The IVA and CC adjustment are adjustments that cover inventory withdrawals and depreciation of fixed assets reported on a tax return historical cost basis to current costs, economic measurements used in national income and product accounts. The IVA increase of 29.4 billion, compared with an increase of 27.5 billion, and the CC adjustment decrease of 220.4 billion, in contrast to an increase of 3.9 billion. Okay. Implications of bonus depreciation on the first quarter of 2015. The Q1 changes in taxes and corporate income in capital consumption adjustment, that's the CC adjustment, reflects the expiration of both the 50% bonus depreciation provision and increase in what they call Section 179 limits claims under extensions of the 2010 Tax Act. And that ends that report from the Bureau of Economic Research. Now let's head back to Greece, and this is a report here, so we can cover this. Just a minute here. We'll go to the Bloomberg News to, we'll go to a different publication here. Greece falls back into recession as the IMF chief, this is Christine Lagarde, warned of Greexes. That's what they have confirmed that. New data published this morning that confirms Greece plunged back into recession. It's in a depression, we call it, last quarter. Just the International Monetary Fund chief said this morning that a comprehensive deal with Greece to avoid its defaulting on loan payment is very unlikely in the next few days. What happens if Greece defaults on loan payments? The data published by Elstat, Greece's official statistics body, shows the economy shrunk by 0.2% in Q1 of the year, the same figure as the previous quarter. Investment by businesses and government fell 7.5% compared with Q1 of 2014. Nice little chart here. We'll see if we can get it up where you can look at it. Greece's next repayment deadline comes on 5 June, when it will be tasked with cash to repay, let's see here, 300 million euros to the IMF. Comments squashed rumors that the two sides have been close to an agreement. Now, this is where we get different things going on. News came as new figures in the country showed bank deposits fell sharply in April, something we've been monitoring. 239.4 billion euros, a drop of 5.6 billion from March, its lowest level in 10 years. The figure will raise the possibility of capital controls being imposed on the country, although so far shielded away from putting limits on how deposits can be withdrawn. In other words, the old run on the bank there from the Moody's Greexit, not invincible there, and this is City AM a publication here. Let me just get to the Moody's situation here also. Greek-X is not invincible. This is from Moody's. Greek is likely to remain in the euro even if it defaults on its $300 million repayment to the IMF. Although analysts have speculated over the likelihood of Greece's exit from the EU today, it's not happening automatically. That's according to a report here. It's evidently the Financial Times. A Greek exit from the euro is not an invincible consequence of default. That's from the Chief Credit Officer Colin Ellis, adding that the decision to split would be a political act. That's quite obvious. In the event of a default, the two possible options for the Greece is first to exit the euro and start printing a different currency immediately, while the others to issue a scrap, essentially a short-term IOU. The latter would just be an initial stage paving the way for Greece to adopt a new currency, buying the country more time for negotiation. Of the two options, as Moody considers the second option more likely. The issue of scrip would be in itself not necessarily imply a formal exit from the single currency. If the scrip was used temporary measure to ease liquidity concerns, the report said if the government were to require banks to accept scrip, and that was done in the U.S. during the Depression, that states issued a scrip. I was talking once to an old line school teacher, And what they got was this IOU script, and they could take it to the bank and go along with their normal economic activities there. So they could go there if the government were to require, capital controls that would not necessarily entail exit. They were used effectively in Cyprus, Cyprus, much smaller economy, to contain the pressure on the banking sector, but the prohibition on free withdrawals of euros in Greece and their transfer elsewhere within the currency union could indicate a high risk of an eventual exit. So these are some things here. Now, this is from the German newspaper, the Frankfurt Echtzeit. Euro risks here. Nice picture of Ms. Lagarde. The International Monetary Fund includes a withdrawal of Greece from the EU. This is from Christine Lagarde. The National Monetary Fund, IMF, includes withdrawal of Greece from the euro area. No longer expressly. Nobody wants the European Greek exit. Executive Director of the fund, Christine Lagarde, said in an interview with the paper, and I'm reading incidentally from the Frankfurt newspaper here, a Google translation from the German. On the edge of the G7 financial ministers meeting in Dresden. The utterance of the IMF director demonstrates the growing impatience of the creditors with Athens. Lagarde disagrees Greek statements according to which the negotiators with the institutions which are in addition to the IMF, the European Union, and the European Central Bank were close to completion. That is more on a propaganda situation. It is very unlikely we'll reach a compromise solution in the next few days. That's from Ms. Lagarde. And after there has been from Greece 10 days before positive signs, we are sober again in the past week. It should be a vast field to plow. Afraid of Greece state bankruptcy concluded that the IM director from further loans from the fund without taking out clear reforms. We have rules, we have principles, we can have no half-baked reviews. The review goes on, not a quick fix method, in order for a bailout of the remaining loan by the end of utility of the euro countries is the end of June. Almost impossible. It makes it almost impossible because this requires between the three institutions. With Athens, only then could the committee creditors to share remaining loan. That's a total of 1.7 billion euros. So thus we have a problem moving on here. Ms. Lagarde made it clear that she does not see the responsibility for the fate of Greece in the currency union from the IMF. If the Europeans want to avoid looming state bankruptcy in the coming weeks, they would take every precaution. If the conditions are met, the Euro countries and the EB, that's the European Central Bank, could have give a little breathing space to Greece. We posted this on our Twitter feed from the Numbers Man and on the Bostonred Facebook page. This is from the Germans in Dresden where they were meeting. Now, the IMF warns against rotten compromise there. The EU has recently signed a willingness to compromise in relation to the Greek government. The National Monetary Fund, on the other hand, is adamant there should be no loans in haphazard manner. That's what Lagarde said on the debt crisis. And we'll see if we can get this in here.